Anthony, welcome to Free Your Voice.
I love it. I already love it. I already love the vibe. I love everything going on here. I'm sure there's something very beautiful going on that green screen that I'm witnessing behind you. I'm loving this. Go ahead.
Anthony, you had like the shortest stint in history. 11 years in the 11 years. It might have been 11 years. 11 days in the White House.
Felt like 11 years.
The news these days is all about Trump. Aren't you glad you're not back in the White House or attached to? That would be really challenging.
I was drawn to public service. So if you told me I could go back to work in the White House for competent people, a competent president, somebody that really wanted to serve the American people and wanted to help heal and fix some of the problems that we're facing, I would do it.
He wins. He calls you up and says, Anthony, I need my boy back.
No, he's the most malevolent. He's the most dishonest. Before you went live, I told you about a very close friend that was a criminal defense attorney that worked for him. He owes the guy probably $1.5 million, doesn't pay his bills. And this guy told me, I have defended murderers, mafia dons, serial killers. I have never met a worse person than Donald Trump. And by the way, forget about me. Right? Everyone thinks, oh, it's personal to me. He fired me. I stayed loyal to him for 2 years. I didn't care that I got fired. I'm a big boy. But he is a terrible human being, and he's
Where is the
terrible.
line? Let me ask you this. Where is the line to loyalty? Like, how do you define it?
The way I tell my children, love is unconditional. I love you unconditionally. You can do anything that you want to me. Unfortunately, I'm going to love you anyway. Loyalty is symmetrical. Love between a father and a son, and hopefully someday between a husband and wife, is unconditional. But loyalty is symmetrical. I think people have to be loyal to each other in business or each other in politics. And if you decide that you're not going to be loyal, then you cannot expect loyalty. Trump is all about asymmetry. Trump is all about what's in it for me. Does it work for me today? If it works for me, great. If it doesn't work for me, let me back the car over this person.
Hmm.
See, this is the problem with what's going on right now with Israel and the Jewish support of Donald Trump. There's a lot of Jews that support Donald Trump. Believe it or not, there were Jews that supported Adolf Hitler in 1933 when he was democratically elected Chancellor of Germany. And so people have a tendency to forget this because we like to revise and wash our history. But Trump is a horrific human being, and he'll put a hurt on Israel. And why will he put a hurt on Israel? Because he's tight with Vladimir Putin. He's a rube of Vladimir Putin. Putin has an OZ to Iran. Iran has been helping Vladimir Putin sell oil, avoiding the sanctions. They've also been funding a lot of the war and sending weapons to the Russians to fight the Ukrainians. And they want Israel off the map. They've been very consistent about that over 45 years. So Trump will do what they want. He's also said he wants out of NATO, this type of, he's a very, very bad guy.
How do you think Tucker did with his interview of Putin? What would you have done?
Tucker I wouldn't have gone number one. Okay. And first of all, I think Tucker was smart not to ask him tough questions. Because if he played gotcha with Putin, he would have gotten probably sprayed somewhere in a cafe with nerve gas. Okay, that's how Putin operates. Okay, he's a sinister guy. He's a horrific guy. And Tucker knows what he's doing, which makes me sad because he's just a useful idiot for Vladimir Putin. He knows how dangerous Vladimir Putin is. He knows the hurt that Vladimir Putin's putting on this country, using the social media tactics, the misinformation. He knows what Vladimir Putin is doing to the French government, the British government. He knows. But yet he's a useful idiot, and there's a very large fraction, pizza slice of the Republican Party. This bizarre woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whatever her name is, they're all bizarre, but it's also tied to Trump. Trump laundered tons of money through his condominium buildings with Russian oligarchs. He did it for a decade. It's very well documented. You can read Craig Unger's book, American Compromise, to understand Trump's tie to Vladimir Putin and why he's obsequious around Vladimir Putin. We are defending the West. We are a symbol and a beacon of freedom. Lincoln called us the last best hope for mankind. We have, whether we like it or not, an obligation because this is an experiment. What we're doing is an experiment here in America. We have an obligation to protect it. We have an obligation to protect those that are our allies around the world. And by the way, whether you lived in the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Spanish Empire, you needed allies. No man, no country is an island, no matter how hard we want to be an island. And there's no such thing in a world 2024 where isolationism for America exists. So these bozos know this. Like I would debate Steve Bannon anywhere, any place, anytime.
But how are you not afraid, Anthony, to speak up, to free your voice? There seems to be no fear for you to speak about what you believe or how you've come to your own conclusions.
I got raised with no fear, but it's also important. I need to be on record. Somebody asked me last night, and it was an interesting question. They said, "So you've been very passionate and very open about your voice and your opinions of what's going on. Do you think you're having any impact on your fellow citizens? Do you think you've moved anybody?" And the implication of what the man was saying was, well, everyone's set in their own polarized positions. No one can move each other. And I looked at him and said, I don't know if I'm moving anybody or not, but you know what I know? I want to be on record.
Hmm.
Okay. When I
Y-
read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's biography and he explained what was coming for the Jews and when he explained what was coming for Europe, I want to be on record. So I am unafraid.
Well, I want to go there then because you knew what you were getting into at the White House. Were you naive or was it deliberate? Were you trying to poke them? Were you trying to stir it? Like, was it even maybe unconsciously you were trying to get yourself canned?
I was fighting with Trump. I disagreed with him. Everyone says I got canned because of what I said about Steve Bannon, which is arguably one of the funniest things ever be said at the White House. And after watching Steve Bannon over the last 7 years, everything I said about Bannon is true. But I didn't get fired for that reason. Anybody that knows Trump thought that was funny. He laughed about that. I got fired because I was fighting with Donald Trump over the 11 days. I got fired because there was one episode where he looked at me and said, I didn't realize you're a deep stater. I thought you worked for me. And I looked at him and said, how could I be a deep stater? I've never even lived in Washington. I've never been involved with the government, but I love my country. I also took an oath to the Constitution, and the stuff that you're proposing is not even legal. So I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to lie for you. And so, he told me on Saturday that I was a deep stater and I got fired on Monday.
During that time period, there was this group called Q. I don't know who it is, what it is. I mean, what was your thoughts on all that?
It's fizzled now because whoever the author was, I think, has grown tired of it. But it was just like a made up, probably, these guys, these former agency guys or these former information propaganda guys, they experiment with all this stuff. Okay. We have a large group of the population that has a propensity towards conspiracy theory. It makes sense. We don't understand a lot of things going around us, the great mystery of life itself, what happens after our death. We have all this mystery and this cloud of uncertainty that we have to live with in our lives. And so therefore, if the Rothschild family is running everything, okay, that could make sense. I mean, that could be clear. Oh, we have a cure for cancer, but they won't give it to us. All of this nonsense, we do this, and these guys, these information agents, these information propaganda experts, they propagate these sorts of things. So, the Q thing was just made up nonsense. They're trying to get people to, think there was something big going on, but there isn't. There's a narcissist who's very malevolent and very mean and has mental illness running for the presidency. And then there's an older guy who is somewhat forgetful, and he's probably only got 5, 6 good hours a day to operate in terms of his clear-headedness. He's running for the presidency. So if you had two movies running on election day, one is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and one is Weekend at Bernie's. I'm going Weekend at Bernie's. I'll take the guy that is elderly and forgetful over the guy that needs a lobotomy. I'll take that guy.
So, Anthony, the nation is relatively quiet, and I like quiet. I mean, there's a little bit of unrest at certain universities, but for the most part, we're a quiet nation. Success, what does it cost you? Because there's always a heavy toll to success.
What does success cost me?
What's it cost
Or
you?
what does my voice cost me? My voice has cost me a lot, actually, because it's hurt my business. It's created some polarity with some of my friends. There's people that are Trumpers now that won't talk to me. And by the way, my son says it better than me. the left hates you because you were with Trump, and so they have nothing. They want nothing to do with you, and the right hates you because you left Trump. So you're in no man's land.
You're like a pariah.
Yeah, yeah, I like that though. But like I said to my son, well, maybe I'm closer to the truth in the search for truth. Maybe I'm getting closer. And so, what difference does it actually really make? But if you're saying is my success cost me, yeah, well, of course, success costs you. I work around the clock, and I pay my taxes and I do everything ethically and honestly, and so it is costly. I get up very, very early. I go to bed late. I've been doing that for 35 years. But I needed, in my mind, to create some financial independence for myself and my family. Your podcast is about freedom. I wanted my kids to be able to freely express themselves in this short life. And I also needed to protect my blue collar family members who I know were going to struggle as they got older. So yeah, it's cost me, but you know what? I like working, and I'm also a passionate person, and this has been a dream, America, for me. Come on. I grew up, if you looked at my ancestry coming back from Italy, Masons, day workers, peasant.
It was work ethic. They worked.
Yeah, you go way back and you track the stuff with the Napoleonic Code. I think my great, 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 great grandfather was an indentured farmer in feudal Italy. Okay, so I am not from the upper crust. I mean, who's kidding who? But yet here I am in this aspirational land known as America, and I'm able to take my wits and whatever God gave me in terms of my IQ, and I'm able to exercise that in America to create success. So, of course, it's costly to be successful, but it's also very rewarding.
I like that. It's a good way of explaining it because most people don't know what their ancestors went through to get here and what they put up with in their 15, 18-hour days. They didn't just interviewed Gene Simmons, and he was talking about how people are so quick to want to take off the weekends. And he goes, if you do the math, you took off Saturday and Sunday, you do that times 4, you do that times, he goes, you realize how many days you're giving up to learn, to make a little bit more money. Um, but what about your self-care plan? Do you have one? I did this mental health course recently, Anthony, so I'm going to brag a little bit. And at the end of it, I went, you're right. I need a self-care plan because we work ourselves to a point where we get super tired, we get a little flustered. Are you at the stage now, you're a young 60, that you've developed a self-care plan?
I think so. I mean, listen, I'm on a regimen of supplements. I'm in the gym every morning. I take time for myself. I'm not this guy that's just switched on all the time where, like I can take a week off or I can take my family away or my wife away. I'm a big reader. I do a podcast called Open Book where I interview authors. I find authors to be very interesting to me because they spend a lot of time writing.
Well, you're one yourself, though.
Yeah, and I understand the process of writing a book, and so I like reading. And what I tell people, for $10, I mean, there's inflation now, but for $10 in 10 hours, you can learn 10 years worth of life stories or lifetime lessons. You mentioned my books. I'm going to show it here, From Wall Street to White House and Back. It's just a story about how I got my kicked in Washington. And then I got my kicked in crypto. I hung on to my crypto, so I'm being rewarded now. And even though I got my kicked in Washington, I didn't give a. You see what I mean? So you get the combination of the kicked and not giving a. I'm in a
But
good
it's a
spot.
mindset
It's a
that
mindset.
you have
Yeah.
that you're not going to give up, you're not going to quit, and you're going to use these moments. So I was the host of the Bitcoin.com show for a number of years. I applaud you for staying in the crypto space. It
Mm-hmm.
is a new asset class. And it's one that, like any new asset class, it's going to have its hiccups. It's going to have its hurdles. I mean, Bank of America named the bank each year. These major banks, they get fined for things, and they have the best compliance departments on the face of the earth. Why do you think the crypto space gets such a bad rap?
It's new, and I think there's been fraud. And let me be fair to Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler for a second, and let me say to you that it wasn't just FTX and Celsius and Three Arrows. It was micro fraud. It was people doing Ponzi schemes in crypto. It was fraudsters telling people they could get rich quick. They put their life savings in it and they lost it. And so, this happened during the robber baron era in the 1890s with the railroads. People were inventing rail shares and selling them unwittingly to people. And there's been a series of things that have happened as we invent new technologies and adopt new technologies where there's fraudsters that come into the mix. And so that's the reason. And then the secondary reason is change. The horse and buggy makers and the horse care people didn't like the horseless carriage, just didn't like it. And there was lots of reasons why they didn't like it. And you could go on and on and on. The fax disrupted things that were happening in the mail. Email disrupted things that were happening in snail mail and delivery of packages and information. We don't even need wet signatures now for most of our transactions. We can do that electronically over something called DocuSign. And so change upsets people. People don't like change. You don't have to watch Downton Abbey to know that. I mean, you know that, right? So crypto represents this wonderful delayering of the society. It takes third parties out of transactions. I can go to the restaurant, pay directly to the restaurant, and avoid the credit card fee. The restaurant puts up with the credit card fee because they know they're going to get their money. But what if they were guaranteed over the blockchain to get their money directly from me after I finish my meal, and they don't have to pay that 3.5% charge? We spend $4 trillion a year, $4 trillion a year on transaction verification globally. What if we didn't have to do that anymore? Think about the unleashing of productivity. Think about all that
A
money.
level playing field
Yeah,
begins.
of course. This is why Elizabeth Warren, I mean, I said something, to be fair to her, but this is why she's a great regressive. She knows that Bitcoin's for the unbanked. She knows Bitcoin is a progressive idea, but she's against it because she doesn't like change and she likes control. And so those are the things. Those are the things I am fighting for, and those are the things I like. And I'm a passionate guy.
You are passionate. It is contagious. So, last question, because you are a learner. What are you learning today?
So, you know, I read. I'm a big time reader. Okay. And so I am focused, and I will be focusing my energies this summer on Abraham Lincoln, because I think about the time and the tribulation and the polarity between the North and South and the free states and the slave states. And so if you think this time is bad, I think that time was worse. And how did this man, who grew up very humbly with no money, was a rail splitter, self trained lawyer, self trained thinker, autodidact in terms of reading, how did he develop the personality and the skill set and his leadership skills to guide the country through the Civil War? How did he do it? And what was he saying at the time that he was doing it? And so I'll say three things before we end this podcast. Okay. Number one, this is it, man. This is an amazing country. This is the great mongrel nation. There's no lineage, no bloodline. We can all come here. Okay. This is based on an idea. The second thing Lincoln would say, because I know because he said it in his own writings, there's no permanent labor class in this country. So I just want to repeat that because if you have European listeners, pay attention to why America is so aspirational and so dreamy and optimistic. We can move. We can move classes. We can free ourselves economically. There's no permanent labor class. And the last thing, which is the most wonderful thing, by and large, this is a very kind and it's a very humble nation. Lincoln understood that and he needed to preserve it. And hopefully, we'll find leadership over the next couple of decades that transcend us and make us appeal to what Lincoln would say the better angels of our nature. And so, for me, that's what I'm learning right now.
Thank you for joining us on For Your Voice.
All right. It's great to be on. Thank you for including me, by the way. I think we found each other by Twitter, right? So I appreciate you.